Alrighty guys, so here's what we got going. We're on the road to prep to head to Cruising the Coast 2022. The old Ford's got some maintenance that needs to be done. I have known for a while it needed a harmonic balancer. So we have a harmonic balancer. We also have a crank seal. It's not currently leaking, but don't want to take a chance. We're going to go ahead and replace it while we're in there. Well, it's been a few years since I've had all this tore down, so I've been taking a minute to ponder and look at a few things so I can remember how it all comes apart. And I believe I'm going to have to take the radiator fan out, and I'm going to try to do it without having to drain the coolant. I'll explain some of how I've mounted the fan here in a few minutes. It's pretty simple. It changed and modified through the years how it was mounted, and this way came up with was finally the simplest and easiest, and basically I have it where it's clamped in place. So then I'm going to have to take and loosen my belts and get the main pulley off, and once I do that I think I will have enough room to get in there and work without actually having to remove the radiator. That's the goal. Alright, so let me show you this radiator fan. This was a Cooling Components fan. They're out of Memphis, Tennessee. This fan's been on here, I don't know, 12, 15 years, something like that. Has worked really well. Shrouded, really big fan. Was the last piece of our cooling problem we had. But I had problems figuring out how I was going to mount it. And what I finally came up with is I made these little brackets, and they've got a little kick out on the end, and it lays up against it, and it kind of pinches it to the radiator. So I don't have to have the little plastic ties that go through your radiator and end up rubbing a hole in the core and whatnot. This just lays against the face of the radiator and gets clamped to it. And at one time, and I think there's still some on here to look and see, but it's I had put foam strips on there to kind of provide some vibration and isolation. So anyway, let me show you. Alright, what I also did was the last time I mounted this is I went and got some blind nuts, the kind that slide over. They slide over this bracket, so I don't have to have a wrench on the back side to loosen it up. So all you have to do is loosen that a little bit, and you see that just swings down out of the way. And now, as you can see, the fan's starting to come loose. And I have one in 4 places on the radiator. So that's all you have to do to take this fan shroud out. Now, why I hardwired it last time I did it and didn't use plug-in connectors, I don't know. I must have had a brain cramp or something. But when we go back together with it this time, it's going to have a connector on it. Alright, as you can see, that getting that fan out is kind of snug. Hopefully I didn't damage my thermostatic switch at the bottom of the radiator that kicks it on by temperature. So moving on to the next thing will be, we're going to get all the belts and all the pulleys and stuff out of the way so we can access the harmonic balancer. That's a pretty simple procedure. Just like that. Alright, like I said, it's been a while since I took this thing apart. The part of the problem is the air conditioner belt. The way this bracketry setup is, the way this top radiator hose comes out of the intake manifold, there's not enough room to get the belt off because it's not long enough to slip up over the pulleys, because we wanted to try to keep everything inside and tight and close. So what I had to do is I loosened the belts, and I've taken the lower pulley off, unbolted it, and just let it hang, and just take the pulley off the belts. This is an old school pulley. It is actually 2-piece. So this outer piece you can add on for your power steering. keep stacking up the parts. All right, so try to keep my belts from getting mixed up, so I won't have to try to figure it out later. And I may be ordering some new belts too, because it's been a long. I don't know when the last time we put belts on this thing. So, oh, way. Now, not sure if you fellas are familiar with this, but this is a harmonic balancer that is not held on with a bolt. The only thing that holds this balancer in place is friction. So, I need to get over here and find my puller and get in here and see if we can go ahead and get it pulled off. Well, it looks like we're fixing to make a parts run. I can use a water brake anyway, but we need to get some bolts long enough for the puller to pull that harmonic balancer off. So we're back from the parts run. We went and got the correct length 3/8 by 24 bolts. I think these are 1.5 inches long. Be able to fit my puller so I can get it on here and get this harmonic balancer off. Come on. Don't. There it went. All right, well there you go. You can see that the rubber has puked out. This one has had looks like it's had a wear ring installed on it at some point. If you look really closely, it's hard to tell, but this hole is supposed to line up perfectly. Well, let me get you this, not hole, this timing mark should line up perfectly with that center hole, and it appears that it may be off just a little. It's hard to tell exactly if it's off. Looking at it from this side, you can see it's dead center on this hole right here, and camera's just not picking it up, but looking at it with the bare eyeballs, it looks like it is turned just a little bit. So I'm thinking that could be our vibration problem. So now we need to dig in and roll the seal out down here, or see if we can get it rolled out. There it is. Finally. And it's a little brittle, so I'm glad I went ahead and pulled it out. Get a rag, wipe the bore. There we go. A socket, a seal, and a hammer. And see if I can't get this to ease on up in there. Straight. I usually just use a little dab of grease. Then I'll put a little dab of grease on the balancer itself. Just a little something to give it some lube so when it first starts out. And a little grease inside to kind of help it slip up on there. Now, like I said before, fellas, this is not the kind that you can pull up on there with puller, or excuse me, this is not the kind you can pull up on there with an installation tool. This is the kind that is a press on, and the only way I know to get it on there, and I ain't any happier about it than you are, it's with a hammer. So very gently, gingerly, with a hammer, we're going to see about putting this balancer back on. This is going to take a minute. Well, after much hammering, lightly pecking, should I say, she's finally on there. I lined up the pulleys. You can take pulley, line it up, find the right hole. There it is. And the pulley lines up. So that tells me that it is in far enough. And the tone did change a little bit, so that helps some too. But now you can start going back the other way with it. Alright, got everything back together, belts in place, tight, everything's tightened back up. Now, I will tell you this, and I don't even know if they make these anymore. Where'd my flashlight go? I don't know what I did, but I dropped it earlier. Here it is. You really can't even, you can barely see it right here. But these brackets right here were really hard to find back in the day, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when we first started building this motor and putting it in this application. But this is called Bill's Hot Rod Company, and I will either have a note on the screen that they're still in business or that they're not in business. Bill's Hot Rod Company made these brackets, and it was specially designed for putting alternators and like compressor mounts, because there's no holes in these old double hump heads. So you had to come up with another way to mount more modern stuff to the top of your motor, and Bill's solves that problem. So I will go and do a little research, and you'll either see on the screen yes or no. Now let's get this fan back in here. and try to do it without damaging that capillary tube at the bottom. It was very tight coming out, and I've got to be very cognizant of when I'm going back in. Alright, we're down, we're past the capillary tube. I don't know what angle did I have on this thing earlier because I can't see how to get it back in there now. Let's see. There we go. There we go, come on, come on. Yeah. Come on. What are we hitting on? What are we hitting on? Come on. Get very, very tight. There we go. Once you get it in, there's plenty of room. Oh, phone's trying to come off. Just let it sit right there for the moment. Now, to get it lined, you just line it back up. And then what you do, the way I designed it, get it back in place and get it where you like it, make yourself happy, and then lay your brackets. I hope you got a good angle on this. This tightens up and mounts the radiator. And gets the fan. That one clamp right there catches the fan. You can see. Now once I bring these others around and squeeze them up, she's in there. She's not going nowhere. And I still got two on the bottom. And if you're going to ask me to lie about what brackets those were, I think they were brackets from a muffler, a universal muffler mounting kit. And I took and bent them and tweaked them, and years of trying to figure out how to get this in here mounted securely. And I find that's what I finally came up with. And it clamps and holds the fan in there just right. Get this piece of foam tucked in here nice and neat. There we go. Get the bracket swung around. Perfect. Swing this one around. Come on. Now, that fan is practically a part of that radiator now. Alright, well, it's all back together. I had to make a temporary fix on the fan wiring until I can get a connector. I think I have one in my toolbox at work. So I just twisted them back together and put some wire nuts on them temporarily. But let's crank it up and make sure that we're not bleeding oil everywhere. Checking your timing. No wonder. It helps to be on number 1, not number 2. They cross. That's got everything buttoned up. The harmonic balancer's back on it. She's not bleeding oil everywhere. Just for grins and giggles, I decided to throw a timing light on it, and well, something's not quite right there. We're not going to mess with that right now. We're going to wait till the off season. It runs okay, but it just doesn't perform the way a 327 should. So in the next video, we're going to be getting back on the transmission. So until next time, until I get that video up, why don't you go watch another one coming on the screen right now.